let's be there. And are you good? The fishbowl was good? It's actually also some food, right? Fishbowl, that's Asian stuff, I think. Okay, well, anyway. So you had fun, and I'm really glad because I was already announcing a couple of times that we wanted to talk about collaborations. We wanted to talk about cooperations. We wanted, and we heard this a couple of times in the morning, how can we pool our forces together to be stronger, to be able to compete together? So basically, innovation strategies in the media sector actually require this cooperation for technology, for the resources also. So we would like to explore now how do the news media industry actors actually pool together when they are supposed also to compete with content. We heard also before, we are not NGOs, right? So how can an organization do this? And for this, we have snap presentations. So there won't be any Q&A this time. It's really like, bang, sharing the experience on the go. So to start this session, we're going to go to a topic which is really gaining in importance and really in attention also from the industry, which is data spaces. So what does that mean? We all know, of course, the value of data. We know it is spread all over Europe, and we know it's not really interoperable, and that's really a big challenge. So what about creating a data space where the actors of the industry can actually make the most of it based on a shared, exploited, common pool of data? That could be an interesting idea, and it is an interesting idea to explore, to check now together what are the opportunities, what are the use cases, and how can we ensure it is trustworthy, transparent, and fair in terms also of processes. This is why we have also here consultants at Intellera, and they will let us know. We will hear from also funding opportunities at the EU level. So first of all, I would like to invite on stage Giovanna Galasso for a snap presentation of the study on media data spaces. And I will come back to introduce the next thing. Thank you very much.
First of all, what is a data space? A data space is a type of data relationship between trusted partners who adhere to the same standards and guidelines when it comes to store and share data. The key features of data spaces which distinguish them from other types of data sharing initiatives is the importance of trust among participants. Trust is not only guaranteed by technological requirements, but also by the data space governance and owner's control over data. Indeed, differently from other data sharing initiatives, in data spaces, data are not centrally stored, but transferred peer-to-peer between stakeholders, transferred against compensation or for free. And the important thing here is that everyone keeps control of its data and exchanges are based on agreement. We at Intellera Consulting, together with Europe's Media Lab, CARSA and KU Leuven University, carried out a study for the European Commission to set the ground to set up a European media data space. The study helped identifying challenges, needs that a media data space could address and the possible benefit from its use through a wide consultation with the stakeholders from the media sector. We identified also possible examples and use cases. In terms of European media sector challenges, you all know that the challenges of the sector are market fragmentation, presence of platform acting as gatekeepers, evolving business model due to digital shift, evolving user experience. The media data space is a possible solution here, a valuable solution, because it enhancing access to data can contribute to addressing media sector challenges, but also peer-to-peer data exchanges are particularly interesting because allow to keep data control. And this is what you highlighted during the discussion this afternoon, needs for trust for data control. We worked a lot for use cases, for example, and we discussed it with the stakeholders benefit for the media sector, which could be better tailored and innovative media offer, more efficient advertising investment, better algorithms recommendation, enhanced control copyright protection. A European media data space could be a solution for some of the issues that you raised this afternoon. Where to start for creating a data space? To define a new data space, because this is really a new data space, we need to start from a concrete example. For this reason, the study team has identified a number of use cases. You find here list some, and which highlighting some areas in which data spaces can add value to several stakeholders. For example, the first one, adaptive content recommendation, respond to the media company's struggle to intercept the right audience and to increase the number of viewers, readers. So today, a large amount of content published find no or very few users, as you discussed. This is mainly due because organizations have limited availability of user data in this context, and the data space could offer an opportunity to access a large amount of data on viewers, readers, habits, and interest. So with this data, having this information available, this could help media players in developing a better tailored offer and designing a more efficient business model. What I would like to highlight that this list is not exhaustive, because a longer list, an increasing number of use cases would be beneficial to fully exploit the potential of a media data space. This was a study almost finalized. The final version will be published in the next few weeks. It's only under revision from the European Commission, but we have already done a summary of the preliminary findings that you can find at this QR code. The result of the study, I would say, are not exhaustive for developing fully a data space, but I'm sure could provide useful guidance and valuable starting point for all the media sector organizations that want to participate to the call for the deployment of a European data space. I'm here for during the networking link, so should you have any question about the study, please get in contact with us. You have also here our contacts.
Wonderful, Giovanna. Thank you so much for this presentation. And yes, indeed, during the networking session, you will be able to ask questions. And I would like to jump right on the next one, because it is all about the Commission call for proposals to create media data spaces now. And I know that we have with us online now here. Can you see everyone? Yes. We have with us Andrea Popescu from DG Connect from Luxembourg. I think you are today. Right?
Yes,
and
from Luxembourg. Yes, indeed.
Exactly. So this is a very sustainable way to share with us a little bit more information about that call. So I would say I leave you the space. I think we will see you on the screen, right? Oh, okay, good. Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah. Hi. Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for having me for this pitch-in session. I'm going to briefly speak about the media data space call for which I'm responsible. So I'm going to follow up on what Giovanna has just said. So you heard from her what are the concrete elements investments needed to build a data space, and what such a data space could bring, the benefits that could bring to the media sector. And now I'm going to talk to you about the actual funding opportunity that the European Commission has put forward. So first, a few words about the context in which this action came to exist. So this action lies at the crossroads of two major political initiatives. On one hand, it's the European Data Strategy Initiative, which comprises, among other, the creation of common and interoperable data spaces in key areas, media included. All these spaces to be funded under the Digital Europe program. And on the other hand, the Media and Audiovisual Action Plan. So that's another initiative. And under Action 4 of this plan, the recommendation to set up a European media data space is provided for in order to foster innovation and encourage new business models. Next slide, please. So we talked about the context in which the action came to exist. And now what about the future? Because the future is may very well concern the metaverse that you certainly heard of lately quite a lot. So it's worth mentioning it because it's easy to imagine that at one point the media data space that's going to be created will intersect the metaverse. And the European Commission intends to have a closer look at this. Actually, the president of the European Commission in the State of the Union mentioned among the new key initiatives in 2023, the initiative on virtual worlds such as the metaverse. So if you want to know more, you can check out the Commissioner Breton's LinkedIn post on Metaverse, where you will find out more concrete steps in this exploratory endeavor that the Commission is going to make. Next slide, please. So the main objective of the media data space call is pretty straightforward. It's to set up and deploy a secure and trusted data space to enable media organizations from all media subsectors to cooperate by sharing and accessing data. Now, a number of principal features. So there should be an infrastructure with governance, trust, and security and privacy mechanisms. Data interoperability, very important feature. European values are at the core, and I quote only ethics, equality, diversity, and also the innovative content aspect that you heard about already. Next slide, please. So quickly about the outcomes and the stakeholders. So what do we expect from this initiative? This initiative is meant to strengthen the competitiveness of the media industry. It's also meant to improve the availability, quality, and interoperability of data, to facilitate the emergence of new models, business models, and their uptake, and ultimately to contribute to Europe's digital autonomy. Now, in terms of stakeholders, there are two main categories, the tech companies on one side, the media organizations that will have to cooperate. They could come from both the private and the public sectors. They could be of all sizes and throughout the EU and the countries associated to the Digital Europe program. Next slide, please. Some practical info at the end. So you have here the link to the call, which is open until the 24th of January. You have all the details you need in there. Just to recap, the budget is 8 million euro with a co-funding rate of 75% for SMEs and 50% for the other beneficiaries. One project will be funded. The project duration is 36 months and it's going to be implemented by the European Commission. So that would be all for me. Thank you very much for your attention.
Wonderful. So you took well note. You had also the QR code before, so you're all set now for media data spaces on the European level. So we approach next to the next level of collaboration and cooperation possibilities here, and this is going to be the next panel. So we would like to discuss these media collaborations for better outcomes, obviously, across the media sector, because it is one of the core objectives of the European News Media Forum as such, to spur these collaborations. I mean, you saw this already with a fishbowl. We wanted already to put you together, but also to underline the value of this collaboration. So we have been saying this a couple of times today. So let us zoom in on how the European organization can actually share technologies, facilities, data, while still working on competing contents. So for this, I'm going to give the stage to my colleague Annelies Beck again. So Annelies, please come back together with your speaker on stage and take a seat, and I will let you actually even present your speakers yourself. And I will be back to take the voice of the online audiences if needed, right? Thank you. Welcome on stage. Thank you.
Three guests, please take a seat, make yourselves comfortable, pour yourselves a glass of water. Hello again. Here we are again. As AC mentioned, collaboration is the key word for this conversation we will be having. I'll be introducing our guests in a moment. Earlier in the day, this morning, we spoke about values, about trust, about what it takes to create a media company and news journalism that is of the essence for a democracy, for society, for people living together. And we looked at it maybe more so from a public service media side than from the private side. But that will be addressed during this session, because collaboration among competitors, how do you do that? How do you make that happen? Does that happen, and to what extent? It's about pooling and sharing, exchanging ideas and so on. Easier said than done. Is it conceivable to work together to create new technologies, sharing facilities and data, as AC mentioned, while still being competitors on continent? There's a cookie apocalypse on the horizon, apparently. What does that mean? New models need to be invented to secure income, revenue, and data collection with respect for users' privacy, of course, the author's work, and thus livelihood in the best of worlds, and publishers' viability, while at the same time leaving room, as said before, for technological innovation. Enough of me. My guests. Let me introduce to you Dorthe Bjerregaard-Knudsen. Welcome to you. You are Executive Vice President, CEO at JP Politiken Hus since 2014, with a rich career before that. I'll leave you to research the CVs in detail yourselves. Welcome to Sarah Geroms as well, working for VRT Innovation, Flemish Public Broadcast. Founder of the Future Media Hubs, an international network of media organizations that focus on innovation through buzzword collaboration and knowledge sharing. We'll go into detail in a moment. And Luca Smol, welcome to you too, Managing Director at Czech Publisher Exchange, CPEX, an association of the leading Czech online publishers, providing advertisers with online advertising space. But also developing tools for the use of stakeholders of the publishing industry. So all welcome. Sarah Geroms, I'd like to start with you. Earlier this afternoon, there was talk of a safe space where people from different backgrounds, with different interests would come together, exchange ideas, and see how they could come up with technologies and ways of working together geared toward the future. And when I heard that, it felt like that is very much what you're doing at Future Media Hubs, or what you want to achieve. Can you tell us a bit more about the idea behind Future Media Hubs?
I'm now curious what the other talk was about. But so Future Media Hubs, like you mentioned, Future Media Hubs is a network of public and commercial media organizations where we share information about innovative topics, and we also set up collaborations. We do this on 4 different angles. So one is younger audiences, the other one is gaming and esports. Then we have all the newest technologies, both in video, audio, and digital. And then the last one is startups and scale-ups, how to work together with them as a media organization and how to help them scale.
And why did you feel the need to bring all these parties together around these themes?
Well, we are too small on our own to know everything, and we found out that all of our colleagues and even competitors, we are actually fighting against the same challenges. So why not help each other out? It's not because that you're competing on content that you cannot help each other on technology. So what we did is just introducing people to each other peers within Europe, because we found out that mostly a lot of them didn't even know each other. So now they have a place to go, a safe space, like you mentioned, to share their experiences, to ask questions. And from there, we try to set up different collaborations as well.
And before I move to the other two, what would you define as the 2 main challenges that you thought needed this kind of collaboration to be addressed?
That's a good question. Yeah, for us it was just not knowing the other people around, not really on a certain technology or a trend, because they evolve obviously, but it was really not knowing the right people, and also just to reduce costs, because if you're doing things together, then it's just easier as well. So these are maybe the two things that helped us in setting up this network.
And just to make it very clear, it's mostly geared toward technological developments?
Mostly, yeah, okay. Although not limited to.
We'll go into detail in the rest during the rest of the conversation. Lucas Schmoll, I want to bring you into the conversation. Also very much involved with the collaboration among unlikely partners, if I may say so. Maybe you could explain to us how that started and what brought it on, because this was not so much the technological developments that were going on, but more a revenue issue, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are 2 main historical moments in Czech Publisher Exchange. The first one was the founding, actually the creation of Czech Publisher Exchange, when it was in the very early days of what we call programmatic advertising. CPEX basically kickstarted it in Czech Republic, and I think it was the first one or one of the first to do it in Europe. So the first thing was, at the beginning, here's this revenue stream that maybe has a potential, but publishers don't have know-how for it, don't have people for it, don't really want to invest in it because they don't really know if it does have the potential. So the idea was, let's pool resources together, let's put our strengths together, create a team that can research it, implement it, and make it work. And also, you know, there's strength in numbers. Czech market is fairly small, and there are several players. Each one of them could work on their own, but if they are together, then the negotiation with the tech companies, with advertisers, basically with everything is much different if you're one publisher versus we're an alliance that covers most of the Czech market. So the first thing was monetization, really. It was like, what can we do with this new monetization stream? And then there were some, I think another one was a GDPR. When it came in, it was supposedly the end of programmatic advertising as we know it. So again, then CPEX came in, and there was another moment for us to actually figure out what to do, how to, you know, how to follow up the legislation, but also
so you provided a service actually.
Yes, we provided a service, and we provided a solution for a problem basically. Next one, now it's identity and the cookie apocalypse that you've mentioned. Again, it makes sense for publishers to work on this together.
It makes sense, but was it easy from the very beginning?
No, it's never easy. I mean, even if it makes sense, it's not easy, right? If you're just working out the details and actually making things work in real life, in day-to-day business, it's never easy. It's a lot of
But also
negotiation.
to convince them to take part and to join forces?
Yes. I mean, even if there's a lot of discussions going on always. You know, there's caveats, there's legal caveats. There's always sort of a fear. Okay, I understand why I should join, but is there a threat for me in this? Am I maybe losing a competitive advantage if I join the others? Maybe I should do it on my own. So these are the questions that keep on popping up every time we do something together. And it's not like we found an answer 10 years ago and now we're living off of it, right? You have to find the answer again and again and again.
It's recurrent, yeah. Dorte, I see you look like you agree and you recognize this kind of story and pattern, so to speak. Explain.
Yes. So I'm here representing the Danish Publishers Collective Management Organization, the DPCMO, where I'm a board member. And what we're collaborating on is defending our new gained right, so the publisher's right, coming from the copyright directive that went into force in Denmark last year, and right after the law was enforced in Denmark, we managed to organize ourselves in the Danish media landscape.
What changed because of that law? Maybe that's...
So the law, thank you, yeah. The law now underlines that even small extracts of our content is protected. So when used by information service providers and when shared on content sharing platforms, our content is protected. And this
meaning it should be labeled as...
Meaning that you cannot just use it without paying us, without entering into license agreements. And the big opportunity here for us in Denmark was that we were also allowed to come together in a collective management organization and to gain collective bargaining power.
Parallel to what Luc
exactly.
is saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is trying to exploit the collective bargaining power when it comes to the protection of our content, and when entering into licensing agreements with the big platforms.
And
right?
that works.
Well. What works so far is that we've managed to organize ourselves in the organization, and we have created a new organization that is covering 97% of the media landscape in Denmark when it comes to publishers. So we have, so we are counting 38 members, covering everything from, so ranging from public broadcasters, state-owned media, over traditional news publishers to magazines, and when I say news publishers, it's both traditional media houses with both print and digital media, but also purely digital media, so new media, so to say. And when deciding on entering into this organization together, we had a lot of discussions. That's why I nodded, because not everyone was convinced that that we could agree on all matters. But in the end, we were all convinced that we're definitely better off by standing united, and we've been granted this possibility of collecting bargaining potential, and we have to go for it and see what we can make of it.
And stick to it.
Stick to it, yeah.
Sarah Geroms, would you say that it's easier to collaborate on technological developments that lie in the future than on financial, economical topics?
I wouldn't say it easier, because it took me more than a year to have our first commercial member within the group, one of our competitors, that was DPG. So it was a lot of hard work in convincing them over and over again. And then when the first came, obviously, now we have all our Belgian competitors in the network.
Yeah. And what's the trick?
The trick is looking for the win-win, because you might have a different focus and different value, but there's always something to win. You just need to find it. And once you found that, and then you can start collaborating, or at least start investigating a possible collaboration. And then as soon as you have some one thing, then there's a little bit more trust, and then you build upon that.
Yeah,
at least for us.
But trust, we started the day by saying, okay, that's a very nice word, and it comes with a lot of love and peace. But in reality, to create trust,
it is really difficult, certainly at the level that I'm working, but sometimes there are political tensions above me, and then it's really important to think, okay, can we continue collaboration? Do we need to hit the pause button? But I think that just by being transparent with your partner from the other organization, this now competitors, that's most important. As long as you're transparent, you're very open, and if it's out of our hands, then it's fine. But then we continue the conversation later when the opportunity arises again.
But in the end, it results, if it works out fine, in something concrete that can be monetized, perhaps. So how do you arrange that? Do you do that beforehand? At the time when it presents itself, how does that work?
Well, before we start collaborating, we set up agreements. Very simple, who is doing what, who is investing how much time, how much money, and also what are possible risks. So we take that into account, but it's not that, because we often work on innovation within Future Meetups, for example. So that's a lot of experimenting as well, just creating meta-humans and let them do things together, or working on voice services, and so on. So it's not that we always are in the state of monetizing it.
Not yet.
Yet.
Yeah.
That's good.
So this all sounds like good practices. Can what you do be extrapolated? Can it be used anywhere? Is it the model for the future, or because that sounds too easy? Or is it context bound?
I think some of the takeaways can be totally extrapolated as well. But what I think when I'm also listening to the stories here, you also probably need some unique context or situation, right? It's either a unique opportunity or a new technology or a common threat or common, I wouldn't want to say enemy, but let's say, let's say enemy. So I think that things like transparency and trust and trying to find a common ground and win-win, these are the things that you can extrapolate anywhere. But it might not work if the stars are not aligned in a.
Yeah, you need a certain context and a certain moment
context,
in time.
some motivation, really.
Yeah,
you need a certain need, a challenge that you both wanna work on. Obviously, otherwise there is no sense, and it might be good for research, but not for real collaboration. In real environments.
Yeah, and then someone needs to take the lead. Important who that is, why that is, or is that also something that just happens when it happens?
Yeah, I think it's important to that we have some initiators, but as an initiator, you have to be very aware of. It's evident, but you have to be very aware of different needs, right? I think that's
of the different participants.
That you want to include. Like in our case, the opportunity here was really to get as many members as possible, so that we could reach, an organization that would really represent the Danish media market.
Yeah, safety in numbers and clout.
And reach, coverage, right? Yeah. Because if we were only a few, we would not be taken as seriously. So we needed coverage to make sure that we really represented the media market. But in reaching that, we had to realize that we were very different sizes and sorts. So even though we're all media companies, we may think very differently of how to exploit the platforms. whether the platforms are just a nice window for exhibiting our content, or whether they are trying to take over the user relationship. And we had a lot of intense discussions in the beginning, but how we managed by raising the discussion, because what we could all agree on, we may not be able in the beginning to agree on whether Facebook should pay this or that, and to whom and how much, and how we should divide the money, but we didn't even have any money yet. So instead of starting by all the difficult discussions and by the hard points that were difficult to reach an agreement on, we raised the conversation, and we could all agree that this was that our content is important for the democracy. So we needed to defend the usage of that content, and we needed to be in control as publishers. And
that everybody could agree on.
Everybody could agree on that. So, and we had several more principles. So by aligning all these, pure principles, it was easier to, agree on the fact that we have to get together. We have to exploit this opportunity. And, referring to the David and Goliath reference used earlier, this is really what is in place here, right? I mean, alone, we won't have any negotiation power. So.
I'm taking on board a question via online, asking you about bringing news organizations together to discuss licensing. Does that also create momentum to discuss technological collaboration, standard setting, etc.? So can you take it a step forward, or do you think, no, we should stick to what we're doing now, opposing an enemy, if I may use that word, and working together in that?
So right now we're focusing on the publisher's right, and we need to be successful in that space. But we're also looking into the implementation of the rest of the directive. There is the Article 4 on text and data mining coming up, which is relevant in order for in relation to publishers' data that is currently now just being scraped and monetized by other parties. But this could potentially also be an area for licensing agreements within the DPCMO if we get the good implementation of the law. And potentially you could think about, but this is really a collective management organization that we've created.
Data mining, is that the new big thing, the new enemy or issue to be dealt with?
I think data mining or stealing, or however you call it, has been an issue for as long as I know. I mean, so. Yeah.
Let me rephrase that. What is the next big challenge then right now for publishers?
I'll take a pick. I mean,
well, you take a pick. What's the most important one?
Well, for us, what do we see as the biggest challenges? I mean, probably two. Apart from the energy and paper prices rising and wars and heating of the planet and stuff like that. It's I would say two things. Yeah, apart from those things, it's for us legislation changes. So it's not that we don't want to uphold privacy and laws, but small changes in how the law is, let's say, interpreted by local governmental offices can have a huge impact on how the publishers can do their business or not. So this is one thing, and another is the good old cookie apocalypse.
Yeah. Briefly, what is it that needs to be stopped or that needs to be replaced in that context?
How do you mean?
Well, the cookie apocalypse, stopping third-party cookies being used. What does it change, and what is needed then to replace that revenue?
Well, it really changes everything. In the online business, it really changes how the whole system works, because it's really built on third-party cookies, and all the everything works with that. And what needs to be done is to rethink the whole system and
agree on an alternative. Then
agree on alternatives, and on one hand, it's a huge threat. On the other hand, it's a big opportunity to maybe rebuild it into something that is going to be better. Because, for example, third-party cookies are the fact that publish or other companies can mine or steal data from publishers. That's thanks to third-party cookies, for example, right? So
you would think you're happy that it will stop?
I think it's going to be very painful, but maybe at the end we're going to be better off if we survive.
Yeah. You wanted to add something?
Yeah, I think the big threat is that it will shift even more power to Google and the likes.
Good.
And I think that's the very big headache of it. But then again, I agree. The shift away from the third-party cookie, but then cookie is only one thing. Then you have all the other technologies that allows third parties to understand what is happening on others' sites and services, and
make a profit of it.
Without the exactly, and without the cookie, you will have gatekeepers being more able to act as third parties, so the power will shift in that direction, and that's why I think this shift really calls for considerations of whether we should change more and not just let the gatekeepers drive the change, but also think about, even though we don't always like all the regulation, I think it's really important to think about regulation that can then handle the division of power here.
But that lifts the collaboration to a higher level, I imagine. That is not something you will want to deal with nationally or with local media, if I may call it that. Is that possible at all? Is that conceivable to broaden the scope of the collaboration? Makes it more complex, no?
I think it's possible. Everything's possible.
Hopeful.
Not everything, but I think at least on the national levels, I think it's going to sort of spark collaboration or motivate it.
Yeah, motivate.
In Czech market, definitely. So, for example, CPEX is basically an alliance of competitors, and in the preparation to the third-party cookies demise, this alliance of competitors has teamed up with another competitor to create a common standard for identity that all the Czech players could plug into and use it instead of to have an alternative for whatever Google is going to come with.
Broaden the coalition, as it were.
Yeah. So again, a very unique situation that created or sparked a cooperation that would have never happened otherwise.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Sarah Geroms, want to bring you into the conversation again. We've been discussing various aspects now of working together. What do you think, from where you're standing, is where it should go? What is the next horizon to arrive at? Is it beat the big tech platforms at a new hype in creating a metaverse or a new, platform where everybody needs to be? Is it being first? Is it being smarter? Is it being cheaper in ways of creating?
I wouldn't dare to say that we can beat them, but if we can be future-proof, then I think we can already be satisfied. Because sometimes now we're lagging behind. We're losing younger audiences, for example. So if we can just pick up the game and be where they are by experimenting with, for example, that technology, we will now be experimenting with connected worlds from different media organizations in Roblox and helping other media organizations to add their world upon it. This is where they are.
So you're creating a sort of parallel metaverse?
Something like it. Just
congregating all kinds of existing worlds already.
Yes. Well, we're starting the experiment right now, so I can tell you about it later. But I think that if we can be on top of that game already, then we can be satisfied. The ambition is very high, but we need to be realistic as well. And we need to fight the current challenges first, and we're not there yet.
Yeah, and the current challenges would be most?
Like I said, reaching younger audiences, same with the different data issues, getting better, safer and more transparent data, story. Also by reducing the cost, like I said earlier, because big challenge certainly for public service media. So if we can build together or buy something from our competitor, even on technology, then that can help us as well in putting that money in other efforts that are needed.
Before we open to the audience, I want to ask you the presentation of the media data space. I saw you were taking pictures of the slides. Does it offer opportunities? What is it that interests you?
Yeah, so currently I'm really dreaming about a world where we would base everything more on first-party data and not share data across sites and companies, because I think that's much more in line with what the users expect and with the whole privacy orientation.
Ownership of data.
Yeah, and we should really, and I also believe if we really respect what the users want, it will also be more beneficial for us in the end. I know it's very far from current practices, but I was just thinking that maybe initiatives like that could help foster new ideas of then how could it work? What could a system only based on first-party data, real first-party data, look like? Because currently we're always discussing it on the basis of how the market is working today. And if we only understand everything out of how it's working today, we always rule out such solutions, just saying, no, we could never live from that. But I think what is needed is really work to be done on trying to design it in a new way.
Something you can agree on?
Yes, I'm not working in the data field, but I know we are also looking together with EBU towards a proposal for the European data space. So I know it's for us also a very interesting possibility for the future, but not really involved that heavily, though.
Lucas, anything to add on that? Might that help?
Not really, no. It's an interesting proposal, but I can't really say. I mean, I have more questions than answers.
Yeah.
Or I would like to know, how the data are collected, what kind of data those are, where they're coming from, where are they shared with.
Yeah, whether there's a role for news media there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, well, questions abound, that's clear. I want to thank you for now, and I want to give you the opportunity to put questions to all three or one of the speakers here before we conclude this session. Anyone? No questions at all? AC? How about our online guests? Or
I'm checking, but no.
No one? Sorry, the lights are really strong. So, okay. You were all crystal clear, is what I gather. Let's see. Let me check one more thing. Yes? Someone?
Yeah.
Floor is yours.
Using my privilege as a moderator to have a microphone. So, no, very curious, very short answer. Do you think that the media are now more prone to collaborate together after the pandemics? Do you think it has been an accelerator? Just a question of mindset, so to speak.
Did the pandemic change anything in the mindsets of media moguls and entrepreneurs crossing divides?
I think in our case, at least in Czech publishers, I think no, not really. I know pandemic changed a lot of things, but I don't think it changed the proneness to collaborate or not.
No.
For us either. It actually made things harder because we had a lot of contacts and we lost them and we needed to restart again. But other than that, for the mindset, no.
Not so much. No? Okay. Collaboration precedes the pandemic. Does what is going on in and around Ukraine influence positions in the media field, news media, publishing? Strange question maybe, but I mean, paper prices are one thing you mentioned, but in terms of collaboration, needing to strengthen one another?
There were some there were some initiatives among publishers and agencies in Czech Republic to sort of raise awareness or promote certain, what you call it when you want to raise money. So,
in solidarity with Ukraine.
Yes, so that was one of the things that happened.
Yeah, but more structurally, of course, it's a different world, as we discussed. I want to thank you very much for being here and sharing your experiences and practices, and good luck with what is ahead, because there's a lot to explore, to develop. Is there a question? Yes. Okay, I'm so sorry. Thank you for that.
Can you hear me? Yes. Yeah. It's mostly for Sarah, I guess. Yeah.
Close up.
It's not working.
You can repeat the question.
Yes, I'll repeat the question for our online audience.
Yeah. Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Now the question is mostly for Sarah, I guess. What is your view on how policymakers can play a role in supporting collaboration? Do you see it more as like, do you see like grant-based support is a key, or you would be more in favor of more structural and long-term support in which the media organization have more freedom to decide what to do beyond like short-term grants? How would you feel more comfortable with money coming from policymakers?
Okay, so just for the online audience, so how do you feel, Sarah Geroms, about the role of the policymakers? Do you welcome a grant system, or do you prefer a more structural funding base or context created by policymakers to do what you do, bring people together and collaborate on technological innovation?
It's an excellent question. So obviously, you probably know that we're looking towards a lot of grants, often succeeding as well. But I think a more structural way would be easier for us. And it's actually something we're looking into as well. We're talking to our members from the network, both public service media together with EBU, but also the commercial ones, on how we could perhaps start that conversation with the policymakers. So if this is a handout that you're giving me, then we're happy to accept it and talk about it further. Okay.
Was it a handout? Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay. So AC, just to make sure, yes?
We have the question from the audience coming, like, do people like to have one login for all media?
Maybe you should ask it from a personal point of view first, and then as in your professional capacity. One login, no more stress about, oh no, my password, what was it?
Yeah, I think if people have to log in, they would like it to be as simple as possible. One login might be the way. It's hard to answer that question, really. I don't think some people. I know people who actually oppose this, sort of like all those Facebook, Google, and Apple logins. They don't do that. They log in selectively, and they want to do that. Some people go for the convenience. I wouldn't.
So maybe there's no overall blanket answer to that. Do you have any idea on that? Would you?
Yeah, I just find it really hard to argue. From a privacy standpoint, it's difficult to then convince the users to have one login across different media outlets.
Feels unsafer.
Yeah,
or
I guess it must. I think it's difficult to sell.
Mm-hmm. You agree?
I agree. I think it will be difficult.
Yeah.
But
okay, AC, did you have more or
no?
Not really. That's clear. This was the time we were allotted. So again, I want to thank you for being here and sharing your information and experiences, and thank you for the questions and for listening so closely. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you very much, dear speakers, for your participation and talking about collaborations. We're going to move to the next step. Yes, this one is a tough one, right?
It is. It is.
In the context of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, information has become a battlefield of its own. So it is all about how to ensure truthful reporting. How also can European media support their counterparts in Ukraine? So now we're going to talk about this very specific field of collaboration between the Ukrainian and European media, and especially under the specific circumstances that we have today. And I will let you and Lise have the fireside chat together with our Kyiv independent, the Zakhar Prosyuk, who is not with us today, unfortunately, but we are really glad that you can have this conversation together with Annelies. Thank you very much and enjoy the conversation.
Thank you, AC. Hello, Zakhar Prosyuk. Do you hear us loud and clear?
Hello. Yes, I hear you well.
We are very happy to have made this connection, literally and figuratively. I can see you on the screen in front of me. The audience can see you on the screens in front of them. Happy that we could make this connection this way. Would have loved to have you here, but of course circumstances create a different situation. Just to make it clear, you're a Chief Development Officer at the Kyiv Independent, but also co-founder and managing editor for the Fix Media, a media and knowledge hub about the European publishing sector. And we've been discussing collaboration here among not always likely partners. And we were wondering, from where you are in Kyiv, in Ukraine, what is the kind of collaboration that can help you do your work as journalists in Ukraine? And maybe we should look at what it was you needed at the very beginning of the war and then move forward through time.
Mm-hmm. First of all, thanks a lot for having me. I'm really sorry I couldn't join you in person. I really wanted to. But you know, things it's hard to predict some things, especially now. I mean, I think collaboration is a very important angle of the current Ukrainian media landscape right now, especially, and the way it transformed since February. Collaboration as it was also transforming. So maybe to give you a bit of context of maybe what is my role and the two of my hats, as you mentioned, Kyiv and the Fix. So the Fix is a media about European media sector, which was not a donor before and was not like a media developer before, but our role changed since February. We launched a big funding campaign to support and save Ukrainian media. And somehow we kind of collected a lot of first-hand evidence of that kind of collaboration. So at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, I would say what was really needed was obviously, money, very simple, equipment, security equipment, PPE, tourniquets, vests, helmets, everything, right? That scale of war reporting, no one was ready for it, and it's impossible to be ready for it. Everyone became a war journalist in Ukraine, and that's why there was a lot of that kind of need at the beginning. And then I would say the need started to transform. And right now, I would say what is the most important, apart from the financial side, is also expertise sharing and long-term relationship. Because it's no longer a sprint. Like it stopped being a sprint, I would say, maybe in the first months. It slowly turned into a big marathon. And the question is, how would this collaboration look like in a year, right? If the active war will still be happening. So yeah, I would say we have this transition right now.
And when you mention expertise, what do you have in mind? What kind of collaboration or what kind of expertise is needed?
On various ways. I think what kind of expertise is needed is, how do you adapt your media to the new reality? How do you adapt your journalists? How do you, security part? How do you transform your business models? Because, for example, Ukrainian media market was mostly reliant on advertising, and reader revenue was still the concept was still at very first stages of its development, and then became a big push to read the revenue because advertisement collapsed dramatically, right? Another part is launching new language versions, for example, or going for new markets, because many Ukrainian media understood the need to, you know, not only share their journalism in Ukraine, but share it with whoever wants to read about Ukraine, right? With an English language version started popping up in many directions. So many new, I would say, you know, in every crisis, there is a lot of innovation and the need to change. And the expertise here is also really important, expertise sharing.
Of course, it's not only the reporting by Ukrainian journalists in Ukraine. There's also a lot of non-Ukrainian European journalists coming to Ukraine. Does that help, or can that sometimes also hinder what you're doing?
I mean, I think it depends on from what lens are you trying to look at it. I think that having foreign journalists in Ukraine covering the war is crucial for the world's understanding of what's happening. So I would say that's definitely a positive thing. But then if you try to look at it from the perspective of, you know, whether it's helpful when for other media are trying to hire Ukrainian journalists, in a way. I remember I had this conversation in spring when someone, like one of the European media, was offering help and saying that they are ready to hire Ukrainian journalists. And I mean, thank you. But that's not super helpful from the perspective of the market, right? When the talent competition is increasing dramatically, right? And Ukrainian media, for example, that were trying to find great journalists in the country, you know, not only now they compete for this talent, but also, you know, 100+ media who are trying to have correspondence in Ukraine, right, and try to hire people on the ground. So it really depends on what perspective I'm trying to take. From the perspective of the market, and that's the perspective which the Fix was trying to have. One of our key goals was to save organizations and save talent, right? Save talent structures even. Make sure that none of the legacy papers in the country, none of the legacy media ends up in the situation where they dwindle or disappear. Like for example, you don't want, I don't know, Financial Times to disappear in UK or Zeit in Germany, right? The same, we don't want to disappear that kind of media in Ukraine because of those crises. So yeah, so that was kind of our key goal, to save organizations and make sure that we can save as much talent as possible. So, you know, you can avoid layoffs, you can avoid salary cuts and so on.
And do you see that working and continuing in the long term as well? Because that may be a challenge, I imagine.
It is definitely a challenge. And to an extent, I would say this was successful. So I don't remember the case where the big national media in Ukraine, you know, disappeared since February, and I think that's a big achievement on its own. I think the challenge moving forward is for Ukrainian media is to adapt to an extent that, you know, now they understand that part of their budgets are reliant on grant support, right? How do they adapt in order to make sure that, for example, in 5-7 years, when potentially this grant support will start to get smaller or transform, would they be ready, right? And I think that's there are a lot of conversations, you know, how do you don't get too much reliance on only grant support? How do you make sure that your core business model that was before February is, you know, still present, or how is it transforming? I think those questions are really important right now.
Yeah, to make it concrete, can you tell us a little bit about how being a journalist in Ukraine changed because of the war? Because you said no one was prepared for this, obviously, but then it happened. Being a journalist in Ukraine on the 22nd of February was one thing, and then on the 24th, 25th, and so on, it was something else entirely in some cases, I imagine.
Well, obviously, I think the biggest change for the journalism in Ukraine was that everyone had to learn to be a war reporter, right? For example, at Kyiv Independent, we had culture reporters, business reporters. There was a clear different desks. All of that gone because everyone had to adapt in reporting what's happening. That was the overarching narrative, that there was no other place for any other kind of types of reporting. And now I think now it's of course adapted. So now there are many angles of how war affected economy, culture, and so on. So but still, this is something that I think every journalist in Ukraine had to learn. And I think another important point in that direction is journalism and the war coverage also transformed right now because of the abundance of information, and the whole information flow is incredibly different from what you used to have 20 years ago, where the main role of media was to actually bring the footage, right? Bring the story. That was all about exclusivity and access. Now it's still partially about that, but it's also to a big extent about fact checking, about trying to understand, build the narrative, and give your audience a context of what's happening on the ground, because there are so many people, with smartphone, with information, with pieces of information, but it's really hard to keep to put them together in a story that is understandable and that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I think that kind of role also changed for media, the role of fact checking, the role of balancing speed and reliability and factuality became much more important.
The information front in the war, is that something that collaboration is conceivable, needed, is happening already, maybe, international collaboration?
So what do you mean?
For example, in debunking disinformation, misinformation, is that something that an area in which you welcome collaboration?
So definitely, I think that that's kind of the topic of our small conversation here. If we would try to list down a couple of things of what is actually collaboration between European and Ukrainian media, how does it actually look in practice? I would say editorial collaboration, editorial joint publishing, joint story development is potentially one big angle. Also fact-checking is the second one. Different areas of cross-promotion and is, I think, the third one. And then that answers a bit more than maybe your question, but I would also add here the other very practical types of collaboration where, you try to, for example, content syndication, where if you see, if you can build good, you see that a lot of good content coming from Ukrainian media, what you can do is, you can adapt it for yourself, and you can buy rights for using that article. That's also what we saw a lot, I think, also at Kyiv Independent. And that's also another area how you can build those, I would say, win-win partnerships, right? It's not just about support. I think it's a really important point. It's about building, also making this collaboration a win-win partnership that would last. And in order to do that, you definitely need to have value that would go to both sides.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. There's an audience here of people in very different positions, powerful positions, often in the media landscape. So there's your chance. I mean, you lined up the main areas of collaboration, but do you have a concrete question or suggestion how they could reach out and make a difference?
I mean, I think a lot of stuff that is happening right now is already quite unique and impressive. I just want to add one good note about the Fix campaign, which we launched in February, is that we were incredibly surprised by that level of market solidarity which we saw. And what I mean by that is we received support not only from big foundations and institutional players, but also from publishers. So Axel Springer donated 500,000 in equipment. Financial Times, Gazeta Wyborcza. There was a lot of many. I have a whole list of publishers who participated in the campaign, and it was incredible. I think quite a unique case of that kind of market solidarity, because this is still competition, right? There are a lot of media with whom you compete, but that kind of also financial support, expertise sharing was quite unique. And I would say this is already something we can be proud of. But talking about what could be done more, I would say, I would say two things. One is looking at, understanding the impact of financial injections in the market pays a big price, right? So understand that the context makes a lot of difference, because a lot of money can, be beneficial, but they can also destroy many market structures. So what I would say is, what I would love to see more is more investment coming in, where many players are not just coming in with an offering money, but coming in and, going for an equity or trying to build a long-term relationship they would also have an interest in, right? And something that would give them the incentive to stay and to develop and to innovate. So I would say this is something that would be helpful. And the second one is, talking about expertise and knowledge sharing, developing new innovative frameworks of that knowledge sharing could be very beneficial. So, for example, my colleagues at the Fixon are working on a very interesting educational projects where we are trying to build simulations for media and give them a stress environment in a kind of test environment. Those kind of things I would say are something that we would love to see more.
Yeah.
Basically, bringing innovation, not just money.
And on an equal footing is what I take away as well. Zachar, stay with us for a moment. I want to give the audience here the opportunity to ask you questions if they have any. There's a lot of light shining in my face, so if you have a question, this is a unique opportunity to do so. AC, I don't know if anything is coming in online. Please go. Can AC's mic be, yeah.
We have the question, how do you manage in the current circumstances to remain fact-based in your reporting? And can you explain how your first-hand reporting is different from coverage by Western media?
Did you hear that question, Zachar?
How do we keep the fact-based reporting, right?
Yes, in the current situation. And
sorry.
The second part.
How can you explain how your first-hand reporting is different from coverage by Western media?
Yeah, the difference with between your covering and by the Western media.
Okay, so I would say, how do you remain fact-based? By staying keeping your standards in place, no matter what. I think this is the very basic thing, but it works, right? So, for example, one of the, I would say, important reasons why Key Independent managed to grow dramatically in the last months was that we were true to what we were doing, right? In terms of, fact-checking, publishing corrections, not rushing to be the first one, but offering people a chance to get information from the ground quickly, but also reliably, and building that trust. And, I think that audience trust is explaining why you should have that and how you can keep it even in those circumstances. And the second one is, how is it different? Well, I can talk a lot about this, but many Western media with good intentions jump in without understanding the context of what's happening. And the role of Ukrainian media and how they are different is that they do, because this war is happening not for, last 7-8 months, it's happening for 8 years. And this was not a surprise to Ukrainian media, despite it being a surprise for so many people around the world that Russia will invade Ukraine. So I think it's really important to to think why was it a surprise and what we didn't understand before and what they do, right? So getting that context is super important. Getting the language is also important. You would be surprised by how many media are using the vocabulary that is I mean, shows that maybe a bit of a lack of understanding. For example, there were a lot of those publishing when Russia so-called annexed territories of Ukraine, that there were happening some referendums, but they were obviously not referendums. They were when someone is holding a gun near your head, that does not consider a vote. But where many were going with that kind of wrong vocabulary, and for many reasons, I don't know why, but it's important to read Ukrainian media and get that context. And I think the audience that we have at Kyiv Independent and other Ukrainian media shows that there is a demand for that in the world.
And the best of worlds, also a willingness to really understand the very different meanings of words in the context. One last check. More questions? No? Everybody got to know what I wanted to know. I thank you, Zakhar, for taking the time to talk to us. One last question for you. Anything else you want to pass on to us, or have we covered the most important things you wanted to share?
I think we covered pretty much everything. Thank you for the attention.
Okay, we thank you for the work and for taking the time to talk to us. All the best, and speak to you soon, hopefully. Zakhar Protsiuk from Kyiv Independent and the FIX.
Thanks to you, Annelies, who have led this conversation together with Zakhar. Pleasure. I will see you in a sec when we wrap up.
Yes.
And before that, we have the closing speech. And I saw him in the audience. And it is Giuseppe Abamonte, the Director for Media Policy here at the European Commission. And Giuseppe, it would be great to listen to your closing speech. Thank you so much for the closing words. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everybody, and thanks very much for joining us today and participating in the News Media Forum. So I would like to start by thanking the two moderators, Annelies and AC, but also Mr. Protsiuk for being with us in spirit and attending, albeit at a distance. So my colleagues bespoke of a lunch. I couldn't be there for the whole day, so I just joined 40 minutes ago. But basically they said that, you spoke about editorial standards and you talked about collaboration. And collaboration is really key because it can develop, can pull together innovation, develop workable technological solutions, pull together bargaining power, and eventually can benefit your own financial viability. And the financial viability is something of the media industry at large, of the European media industry at large, I would say is one of our guiding principles. It was the guiding principle of the copyright reform. The neighboring right for press publishers is aimed at enabling press publishers to enter into monetization agreements with news aggregators, which are not very often are not European, and also the famous or infamous Article 17, the so-called value gap, was aimed at closing this value gap, so the transfer of worth from the European right holders, so media companies, to the American platforms for the benefit of the European media companies. Now, so we spoke today about also disinformation. Now there is another piece to our jigsaw puzzle, which is the European Media Freedom Act. The European Media Freedom Act is the most important thing which is going on in the field of media policy. It is a proposal for a regulation which was adopted by the Commission on the 13th of September. And the idea is that media freedom is a key element of democracy, of the rule of law. So media pluralism is one of the key areas, it's one of the pillars of the rule of law mechanism and of the rule of law reports which are drawn up every year by the European Commission. So without media, without pluralistic and independent media, we don't go anywhere. So it is true that Europe maybe is the most favorable continent for media companies and for journalists to do their work, but there are problems. There are problems which are widely reported, both in the rule of law, but also in the Media Monitor, which is a comparative analysis of the situation of media pluralism, which is carried out in Florence by the Institute for European Studies. And so there is evidence of growing interference in the operation of media companies, both by the states and by private actors. And it is not just a problem which concerns some, well-known countries. It's a problem which affects many, many countries of the European Union. And therefore, the European Media Freedom Act tries to remedy the situation. The first thing it does is to provide for the first time a right for citizens to obtain quality information across frontiers. So quality information in the EU. And of course, the other side of the coin is that media companies should be able to do their job freely, independently, so nobody should interfere with the daily operation of the editorial rooms of media companies. Maybe there is, the most courageous provision of the European Media Freedom Act is a provision which says that media companies should put in place safeguards, which may be governance safeguards, for example, to make sure that the publisher, so the owner, doesn't meddle with the daily work of the journalists and the editorial rooms. Another thing which is very important are the rules on public media companies, which should be, again, free to do their job without interference from the government, and which should be adequately staffed and resourced, because without, sufficient resources, media companies can't do their job properly and independently. There are rules also on transparency of media ownership. For example, there is a requirement for media companies to always disclose the ultimate benefit, so the beneficial owner of the companies, who is the real owner of a media company. And there are also rules on more transparent and unbiased allocation of the advertising budget of the state. So to make sure that all the money doesn't go only to companies which are very, very close to the state. And there are many, many instances which are documented of biased allocation of the state advertising budget. So many instances which are documented in the rule of law and in the media monitor. There is another point which is very important. So there is a requirement for unbiased and transparent methodologies for measuring the audience online. So there is something which is important for gauging the attractiveness and so the worth of a site online, because the more audience goes to to a website, a particular website, the more lucrative that website will be for the advertisers. So it's important to make sure that proprietary systems, which very often are held by the platforms, are transparent and unbiased, and the logic behind the systems is, so behind the measuring of the audience, is disclosed upfront. Yes, also something which is very important is that there are rules aimed at protecting journalists which can't be detained or for example, whose tools can't be, so they can't, there is a prohibition to install spyware on the devices of journalists, for example, and there is a requirement not to force journalists to disclose their sources. So there is the general rule. There are some exceptions only for the investigation of a close, short list of extremely serious crimes. Yes, and then finally, an issue which is very important is the removal or the suspension of online intermediation services, because content, so because legal media content is against the standard contract terms, so the terms and conditions of platforms. And so there are some new rules which are very much media freedom, so media friendly, which require very large platforms to motivate, so to justify their decision to suspend content which goes against the standard terms and conditions of the platforms. So to notify the decision to the media company, justify it, and handle complaints by the media companies as a matter of priority. We also adopted together with the Media Freedom Act 2 recommendations to giving a number of examples of governance mechanisms ensuring the safeguard, ensuring the independence of media companies, and illustrating how to enhance transparency of media ownership. So something which is important, so my call to you is to support us, because really it is the European Media Freedom Act, the beneficiary are the citizens, so the recipients of news, but also media companies. So you as media companies, academics, you are kindly requested, invited to support the Media Freedom Act, because I'm sure that the proposal will have lots of enemies. And finally, I would like to say that the next European News Media Forum will be devoted to the European Media Freedom Act, so I'm sure there will be plenty of opportunity to discuss. Thank you very much indeed, and I don't know if there are any questions, if you have any questions for me on this information, Media Freedom Act, and if not.
Later on, probably.
I'm glad to go. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. I was already tweeting the closing speech. Even if I have to say, I will have to ask a couple of fellow journalists and colleagues here to ask, like, should I stay on Twitter? But that's another question. Talking about independency of freedom of the media. So, thank you. I think we are at the end of the day. I think we made it all, and I would love to have my colleague Annelies back on stage with me, just for a little, let's say a little fireside chat between us two, right? And just have a couple of notes about what did we notice today. Do you have a couple of like quotes that you really liked, and what happened from your end?
Well, from my end, what stays with me is that we've been discussing all kinds of apparent contradictions, and somehow they all move towards each other and gel, if I may say so. For example, ethical algorithm, Somehow that sounds like a contradictio in terminis. Emotion-based information, same. Speed versus speed versus content versus format, as if it's all contradictory. But no, it was brought to the table as something very self-evident, something that needs to be mixed and blended. So what we've been doing, I guess, is bridging all kinds of gaps and divisions and finding common ground in order to move forward, both on the level of content, on the level of technology, on the level of David and Goliath trying to find some common ground, who knows? And I think that's interesting because it means that there is a lot of energy going around and urgency as well. Problems, yes, but also willingness to find each other and move forward.
Yes. I must say that something which is strongly resonating with me and talking about bridging, like we've been talking all day long about innovation and doing stuff and understanding audiences and etc. And what really resonates with me is what Zakar was just telling us, adapt to a new reality. What a lesson from the war. We are here in Europe in a privileged situation. We have funding, we have grants, we have technology, we have access to technology. We have collaboration, we can mingle, we can network. Are you telling me we can't do it? So I think this incredible invitation from an act of courage, and we were talking about fear and courage before. And I think it was really something which is really like, at the end of the day, where I'm like, yes, you make it because you have no choice. And I think if I had to do another workshop this afternoon again, I would probably take there is one of the Harvard method, which is giving constraint. You have no choice. What are you going to do now? Right?
Yes, and also tying in with that, and also something Zakar mentioned is back to basics. What is it all about? It's about correct, accurate information. That's what it's about, clarity. And in that, by providing clarity and good information, handing citizens agency. That's what it's about in the big building that is a society and a democracy at large.
And I think we talk a lot about independency, about freedom, about, well, you know, ethical stuff. At the end, it is in us. It is like accuracy, attitude, honesty. We heard 1 or 2 times during the day, also I think it was very nice, like, well, we made a mistake, and, well, okay, we apologize. Yeah, okay, we made a mistake, we apologize. Great, you know, but just being honest instead of, you know, like putting under the carpet or something, you know.
Openness, curiosity.
Exactly, and, you know, like, this is where ethics is actually starting, right? So, yeah, this is something I noted. What else?
Well, there's a lot already, I think, to be honest. I myself had never been in a fishbowl, and I was skirting the outside, but I must say it was intriguing and very, very interesting to see. And I think it brought up a lot of information and of exchange that was, of course, the purpose, but it really worked, it seems. So congratulations.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I really enjoyed it too. And maybe something that was also coming in a couple of places during the day about diversity and diversity in the newsrooms, because it is actually enriching well, I would say, you know, plurality of voices and reality. I mean, this is also adapting to a new reality. And we were saying this also from this morning on. Yes.
Absolutely.
Anything else? Is there anything that you notice, like one thing when you're like, oh, that was marking my day. I took that with me. Who would like to tell a couple of words? 1 word, 2 words. Are you courageous? What are we talking about? Come on, you're all in the media industry. We can't see you on top of it with it. Anna? Yes, all shadow. Yes, exactly. Anyone would like to add a word? No?
I think it's too much food for thought. Everybody is feeling like, I'm going to digest this. And then tomorrow.
Yes, exactly. And then, well, I think we're done, right? Yes.
Let's call it a
And
day.
actually, we are not completely done. There is a networking session for those who want to continue the conversation, ask questions. We have also here our experts also from the European Commission. We have the colleagues from the media industry here. So enjoy the connection. I want to say thank you to the online audience. And you have been here all day long. You have been asking questions. It's always a little bit difficult when you are in front of a screen, but you were with us. So thank you, and hope you enjoy yourself. And come next year for the next, well, let's see if it will be a fishbowl. Let us
Come
see.
and join us in person.
Exactly. Okay, so thanks a lot. And I want to say also thanks to the tech team to have made this possible. And I want to thank also the students who are here, because you are the next generation. You are the future, so make it happen. Thank you.
And thanks, AC.
Thanks, Annelies.